Since I was little, I longed for an older sister. Every day I clinged to my dad, nattering on until he was so exasperated he couldn't take it anymore. Finally, Dad stroked his chin and said, "My boy, this is a tricky matter to resolve, unless you can be reborn again." I pouted, pretending I didn't care. "Fine, forget it." Truth be told, I wasn't that desperate. But then, unexpectedly, Dad remarried. And I actually got an older sister. Grace Claude, a year older than me, in the same grade as me. I was thrilled to the point of madness. But she was utterly cold toward me. At school, she wouldn't even let me call her sister. I figured she just wasn't used to suddenly having a younger brother. So I tried my hardest to be good to her. Every morning, I'd wake up early and wait at the gate, determined to walk to school with her. After school, when friends invited me to hang out, I'd decline, rushing straight to her classroom to wait. But she always dawdled. The classroom would be empty, and she'd still be sitting there. That day the class president stepped out, looking at me in surprise. "Felix Round, why are you still standing here? Everyone's gone." My legs were numb from standing. I softly said, "I'm waiting for Grace Cloud." The class president turned and shouted into the classroom, "Grace Cloud, stop dawdling. Someone's waiting for you." Through the window, I saw Grace Cloud's face twist in irritation. She slung her bag over her shoulder with a huff, kicked her chair with a loud thud, and stormed out. The class president chased after her, asking, "Why do you stay behind in class every day?" Grace Cloud didn't bother looking up, doing homework. The class president, defending me, said, "Can't you do it at home, making someone wait this long?" Only then did Grace Cloud glance at me. She sneered, "I didn't ask him to wait." I quickly smiled at the class president. "It's fine. Maybe she didn't know I was out here." Just those 2 sentences. And Grace Cloud walked off without looking back. I hurriedly chased after her. As I passed her classroom, I glanced at the trash bin by chance, and saw a familiar corner of wrapping paper sticking out. It was the sandwich I'd woken up early to make that morning, carefully prepared following my uncle's recipe, even choosing the prettiest wrapping paper. When she took it that morning, I foolishly thought our relationship was finally about to improve. On the way home, Grace Cloud treated me like I was air. No matter, I could find things to talk about myself. Today, the homeroom teacher came to check discipline. "It was hilarious," I said as we walked. When he came in through the back door, he said our class was the noisiest. Then he circled to the front and praised us for being the quietest. Ha ha. My laughter echoed on the empty street, sounding so awkward. "Can you shut up?" Grace Cloud suddenly cut me off coldly. I immediately clamped my mouth shut, muttering a quiet sorry. She quickened her pace, leaving me behind. I mustered all my courage and called out, "Sis, can we just talk properly? Have I done something wrong?" Under the streetlights, she turned around. Her eyes, full of disgust, pierced me painfully. "Your little tricks, you think I don't see through them." Her words cut into my heart like a knife. "Felix Round, the more you try to please me, the more disgusting I find you." I sank to the curb, burying my face in my arms. Tears streamed down uncontrollably. Since I was young, after my parents' divorce, Dad raised me alone. Despite his busy work, he always remembered my birthday, always gave me the best he could. I cherished this family too much to make things hard for Dad. Dad always tried to build a good relationship with Grace Cloud. After crying for a while, I wiped my tears and stood up. Maybe Grace Cloud just didn't like overly close family ties. Following her like this only made her hate me more. I took a deep breath, decided to try one last time. If it still didn't work, I'd let it go. The next day I woke up early, bustling about in the kitchen all morning. A tray of 12 cupcakes neatly arranged, each topped with a delicate swirl of frosting. I carefully packed them into a gift box, thinking this time, I'd surely show Grace Cloud my sincerity. Carrying the box to the karaoke room door, laughter and chatter from Grace Cloud and her close friends echoed inside. I was about to push the door open, when I heard a girl curiously ask, "Cloud, that kid from class 3, Felix Round, does he have a crush on you? He brings you breakfast every day and waits for you after school." My hand froze midair. They didn't know we were siblings. My heart suddenly tightened. The room went quiet for a few seconds. Another girl chimed in. "I thought Cloud liked guys like that. Good looking, great at studies." What hurt me more was how they started discussing my appearance, in a gentle tone, even joking that they should call me brother. I shakily pulled out my phone and hit record. Amid the suggestive laughter, I finally heard Grace Cloud's voice, cold as ice. "That guy, I can't stand him." Her words were like a bucket of cold water over my head. The cheers in the room made my hands tremble until they went numb. Standing in the hallway, I suddenly felt nauseous. So it wasn't that I wasn't good enough. Grace Cloud simply didn't deserve to be my sister. Looking at the carefully prepared box of cupcakes, I wanted to throw them straight into the trash. But in the end, I hid in a corner and stuffed all 12 into my mouth. The sweetness of the frosting mixed with my tears as I swallowed. Life suddenly felt lighter. I stopped chasing after Grace Cloud's footsteps. Each day I strolled to school at my own pace, even stopping to buy a hot breakfast from a roadside stall. After school I'd hang out with friends, eating our way through the entire food street, lingering until the sunset before heading home. My love for baking stayed with me, only now the little treats I made were shared with my classmates. Every time they praised me, "Felix Round, your skills are amazing," I thought to myself, without Grace Cloud, life is actually this pleasant. That day I carried a bag of LUONG potatoes, grilled tofu and cold grilled noodles home. From a distance I saw Grace Cloud standing like a gatekeeper. At the front door, I instinctively hid the bag of food behind my back. "Want to try some?" Truth be told, my heart was pounding. There was only enough for me. To my surprise, she suddenly snapped, "Felix Round, you're this old, and you eat this junk every day. Can you accomplish anything worthwhile?" I looked at the fragrant LUONG potatoes in my hand, thinking, isn't this the greatest thing in life? Even funnier, she said, "Don't embarrass me," as if the whole school knew we were related. Watching her slam the door and storm off, I decided to deal with the delicious food in my hand first. After all, cold potatoes aren't as tasty. The day the monthly exam rankings were posted, I surpassed Grace Cloud by a full 10 points. Seeing her face turn green as she walked away, I guessed she was hit pretty hard. But to my surprise, after a few quiet days, she suddenly posted on social media a photo of 2 hands tightly clasped, with the caption, "From now on, I'll only protect you." The comments below were all calling brother. I stared at the photo for ages before realizing it was that kid Victor Prosper. Grace Cloud always said she stayed late to tutor him, so this was her tutoring. Thinking of her terrible grades, yet daring to tutor someone else, I nearly burst out laughing. While scrolling through social media, I got a message from Grace Cloud. Reading the first line, I puzzled over it. Was she asking me to like and bless her post? To ease our relationship, I obediently liked it, and carefully commented with "Nini teeny roses," only to find minutes later, she'd blocked me. In the days that followed, Grace Cloud seemed intent on provoking me, clinging to Victor Prosper every day, acting all lovey-dovey in the cafeteria. The scariest part was, they could, without batting an eye, feed each other the cafeteria's dry, tasteless rice. I watched, feeling my stomach churn, especially when Grace Cloud noticed me looking. She'd double down. Victor Prosper's face was green as a banana leaf. That day when I pushed open the door to our house, I almost thought I'd walked into the wrong place. Grace Cloud had brought Victor Prosper home. The kid was staring at the family photo on the living room cabinet. "Cloud never mentioned she had a brother," he said, feigning surprise. I replied expressionless, "Now you know." Unexpectedly, the kid flashed a sly smile. "Felix Round, are you challenging me?" I was almost floored by this logic. I just looked at him with pity. It seems the cafeteria's dry rice didn't just taste bad, it also fried his brain. When Grace Cloud came in with water, Victor Prosper instantly latched onto her. Pointing at the photo, he said mockingly, "You two siblings are so close. It's making me jealous." Grace Cloud whispered something in his ear, and they both burst into hysterical laughter. Even worse, right in front of me, they got all romantic on the sofa. The scene was like something out of a restricted movie. Unable to stand it, I started to leave. Grace Cloud suddenly called out, "Felix Round, who's that sulky face for?" I didn't look back, heading straight to my room. Behind me, her shrill yell echoed, "Now you dare talk to me with that attitude." Closing the door and putting on headphones, I worked through an entire physics problem set, finally pushing those horrific images out of my mind. In the dead of night, I crept downstairs for water. As I opened my door, I heard Grace Cloud on the phone in the living room. Her back was to me, her voice soft. "Have Felix Round transferred to First High? The teachers there are better." The other end seemed hesitant. She added, "He said he wanted to go. He's in 11th grade now. It's time he learned to be independent. I stood in the dark, listening to the whole call. When she turned and saw me, her face flashed with panic, but she quickly regained her haughty air. You heard everything. She tossed her hair. We're not real siblings anyway. Keeping some distance is good for us both. Her words were absurd. I couldn't help but laugh. Grace Cloud immediately frowned Felix round. You need to understand. I only see you as a brother. I looked straight into her eyes and replied, really, if you hadn't said that, I'd have thought you saw me as an enemy. She suddenly stepped closer, backing me into a corner, her lips curling into a mocking smile. You and your dad are cut from the same cloth, stealing my mom's bed, and now it's your turn. Her words were like a sharp blade, slicing through all my doubts. So in her eyes, I'd always be an outsider. A crisp slap echoed through the living room. Grace Cloud tilted her head silent. I pushed her away hard and stepped outside, but I heard her say behind me after this term, "I'll come pick you up." I bit my lip, holding back tears. No need for her to say it with that disgusted tone. Stop acting like a child. Back in my room, Dad's call came right on time. His cautious voice asked round, "Is transferring schools really your idea?" The walls I'd built up crumbled again, but this time I was resolute. If Grace Cloud hated my existence that much, fine. I didn't want to see her fake face anymore either. It's my decision. My voice was calm. For senior year, I want to live in the dorms. Hanging up, I stared at the ceiling, dazed. Some relationships are like shattered glass. No matter how you try to piece them back, they'll never be the same. The transfer process went smoother than expected. After all, my grades were impressive enough. On the day I packed my things, Grace Cloud stood with her arms crossed at the door, looking at me with an unreadable expression. But this time I didn't care anymore. I coldly watched my stepmom help carry my suitcase to the car. Felix Round don't regret this. She left me with those words. I didn't respond. My stepmom bluntly pushed her aside. You're this old, and you can't even lend a hand. Settling into my new class was quite a coincidence. There happened to be an empty seat. My new desk mate Luna Song was very friendly. As soon as I sat down, she leaned over asking, chatting about everything until she asked why I transferred. I made up some fancy excuse. To my surprise, she looked heartbroken, as if she'd seen someone throw a limited edition model in the trash. Some impulse made me change my story, saying I actually came because of someone I secretly liked. Luna Song's eyes lit up instantly. Before I could continue fabricating, she started her own script. It's Willow Serenity, right? She's the school's beauty queen. She excitedly patted my shoulder, her voice so loud the whole class heard. By the time the bell rang for class, when the teacher called Willow Serenity to answer a question, I realized things had gotten out of hand. Looking at the girl standing up from the back row, my whole body froze. Luna Song, you troublemaker. She knew the person was sitting right behind us, and still shouted it out like that. Willow Serenity's clear explanation rang in my ears, but all I could hear was my heart screaming in panic. I sat ramrod straight all day, my back stiff as a steel plate. When the dismissal bell rang, sweat dotted my neck. I packed my bag deliberately slowly, afraid to make any noise. The hallway lights stretched my shadow long and thin. I could almost feel a pair of eyes fixed on my back. The new school campus was ridiculously huge. After weaving through a few buildings, I was completely lost. Faint noises echoed from afar. Following the sound, I turned into a narrow alley. The sight before me left me stunned. 5 or 6 kids with dyed blonde hair, crouched in a row, clutching their heads, and leaning against the wall, was Willow Serenity in her uniform, her collar slightly open, a cigarette unlit between her fingers, her gaze cold as ice. I instinctively wanted to back away, but my shoe crunched on a dry twig. The moment Willow Serenity looked up at me, I decisively mimicked the blonde kids, crouching down and clutching my head. As she approached, I could even hear my teeth chattering. So it's you. Her voice carried a hint of mockery. I sprang to life, stammering, sis. I messed up. Where did I go wrong? Her shoe tapped my knee. The question caught me off guard. I mumbled, unable to answer. Willow Serenity suddenly laughed, crouching down to my level. Didn't you say you had a crush on me? The blonde kids all perked up their ears. She leaned in, blocking their curious gazes, pulled me to my feet. Let's get you back to the dorms. And on the way, tell me how you're crushing on me. The night breeze carried the scent of osmanthus past my cheeks. I stared at our shadows overlapping on the ground, wanting to disappear on the spot. Willow Serenity toyed with my student ID, which Shed pulled from my bag's side pocket, slowly reading my name aloud. Felix Round, classmate, your crush story better be interesting. The streetlights cast her eyelashes into fragmented shadows. I stared at those flickering specks of light, suddenly feeling that transferring schools was a colossal mistake. The streetlights stretched our shadows long and lean. Willow Serenity suddenly nudged my shoulder. Hey, walking with your crush and you're this quiet. I looked at my swaying shadow on the ground, stubbornly opening my mouth which way to the girls' dorms. She stopped abruptly, squinting at me. That's all you wanted to ask? I gave an awkward smile, stepping back. Actually, you misunderstood. The crush I mentioned wasn't that kind. The night breeze rustled the leaves. I hurriedly clarified. It's the kind of admiration like for a sister. Willow Serenity burst out laughing, her fingers twirling her ponytail. Then call me sis and let's hear it. Her words made me choke, coughing while clutching a tree. She pretended to pat my back. Little bro, don't get so worked up. I steadied my breath and said solemnly, classmate Willow, I think we should stick to a regular classmate relationship. Oh, she shook her head regretfully. But I hold grudges, especially against liars. Before she could finish, I grabbed her hand sincerely, saying, sis, I've always dreamed of a sister like you. I even forced out a few non-existent tears. Willow Serenity, satisfied, patted my face. Good boy. As I started to slip away, her lazy voice called from behind, wrong way. The boys' dorms are in the opposite direction. Under the moonlight, I stiffly turned around, finally understanding what it means to bring trouble on oneself. The dorm bed was hard as a rock. I tossed and turned until midnight before falling asleep. At the crack of dawn, I jolted awake, realizing morning self-study had already started. My stomach growled as I rushed to class. The blackboard was already half covered with formulas. 3 periods and my stomach began to protest. I snuck a note to Luna Song. She read it and tossed it back without hesitation. The paper landed right on Willow Serenity's desk. I gaped at her move, until a pack of biscuits was thrown back, with a note bearing 6 dots, leaving me utterly bewildered. What did you give her? I grabbed Luna Song, grinding my teeth. She replied nonchalantly, didn't you ask who's top of the food chain? The biscuits in my hand suddenly lost their flavor. Who'd have thought the top delicacy was a person? Thinking of the golden ling na potatoes at Second High's cafeteria, those were the true love of my life. Luna Song leaned in, asking about Second High's top dog. I blankly spat out 4 words. She scratched her head, muttering that name sounds so refined. I silently buried my face in my book, finally understanding what it means to talk past each other. The cicadas buzzed outside the window, mirroring my tangled emotions. Grace Cloud had been distracted in class lately. The teacher had to call her name 2 or 3 times to snap her out of her daydreams. Every time she passed the neighboring classroom, her eyes unconsciously drifted to the empty seat by the window. Then Shed jolt, remembering. The seat's owner had transferred. When she pushed open the door to our house, darkness and silence flooded in like a tide. Back then, at this hour, the kitchen would be filled with the sound of me chopping vegetables, or laughter from a TV show. Now only the hum of the fridge grated in the empty living room. She pulled out her phone. The moment the screen lit up, her heart skipped half a beat, but the message that appeared made her face go cold. Another sappy invitation from Victor Prosper, that kid always caught up in romance. Even his sister calls carried an annoying sweetness, unlike me, who always annoyed her. But at least Grace Cloud quickly killed the thought. It hadn't even been a week since we parted, yet she was starting to miss the troublesome kid. She stared at the dark window, lost in thought. Maybe after the if I just try a little harder, bringing him back early isn't impossible. Before turning off her phone, she couldn't help opening our chat. The last conversation stopped before I transferred. Now the chat was silent, making her heart race. Normally at this hour, I'd have sent a dozen messages, all trivial nonsense, from new cafeteria dishes to friend gossip, chattering until I fell asleep. Wednesday noon, when the dismissal bell rang, I sprang from my seat. Today was special stir-fried noodle day at the cafeteria. If I was late, there'd be nothing left. But my collar was grabbed. Willow Serenity's slow voice sounded behind me, running so fast. In a hurry to be reborn. Let go, the noodles are almost gone. I stomped my foot in frustration. She suddenly leaned close to my ear. It'll take you somewhere even better. 10 minutes later, we climbed through a gap in the school's back wall, wove through several turns and slipped into an alley. The sizzle of grilled squid, the steam from an Odin pot, and the sound of meatballs dancing on an iron griddle. This was the taste of life. Order whatever you like, sis is paying. Willow Serenity waved her phone. I was so moved I nearly called her sis on the spot. Her sis felt closer than a real sister. She smiled, scanning the payment code as smoothly as flowing water. At the end of the alley, Willow Serenity suddenly crouched in front of a stall selling red bean bracelet, flipping through to find a red bean stone carved with serenity. I was staring blankly at the pile of red beans beside her, when a familiar hand reached out, snatching the red bean stone in front of me. 10 times the price and it'll let you have it. Willow Serenity was still negotiating with the vendor, but I was frozen in place. Grace Cloud turned around, still clutching the red bean stone. She looked at me, then at Willow Serenity, her voice trembling. What did you call her? Before I could answer, Willow Serenity stepped in front of me, smirking like a cat that got the cream. Classmate? He called me sis. Is there a problem? The smell of cooking oil in the alley grew stifling. Grace Cloud's fingers gripping the red bean turned pale. I slowly realized trouble was brewing. The smell of oil in the alley felt suffocating. Grace Cloud's fingers clutching the red bean were white as bone. She stared at me, her voice hissing through gritted teeth. She's your sister. So what am I? I'm really cursed. I bit into the crepe in my hand, suddenly finding it tasteless. Willow Serenity casually plucked a green onion from a nearby stall, brushing it over my shoulder. Muttering something, I was about to mock her little trick, but she pulled me away. Grace Cloud suddenly lunged forward, blocking our path, her eyes shimmering with tears under the streetlights. You're still mad about the transfer, aren't you? Her words were laughable. It was clearly my own decision. I said bluntly, I'm not mad at you. I just hate you. She staggered, as if she hadn't heard, continuing to mutter. You've been at second high for 2 years. Transferring suddenly must be hard to adjust to. Her words were so ironic. Back when she pushed me to transfer, why didn't she think of that? Don't come back. I cut her off. Willow Serenity, deliberately bumping into her, shouted, oops. Some face was blocking my view just now. I couldn't help but laugh. Behind us, Grace Cloud's teeth ground audibly. Felix frowned. You'll regret this. But neither of us looked back. Willow Serenity and I shared the Odin as we walked away. Behind us, I could still feel her piercing gaze. The alley's streetlights stretched our shadows. Grace Cloud's shadow sank into the deep darkness of the alley. Grace Cloud gripped the cold bag of lingna potatoes, her fingers marked red by the plastic straps. Shed carefully chosen, my favorite snack. Even lingered at the stall to pick a red bean bracelet, but then saw the kid who used to follow her, calling another girl sis with such closeness. On the way home, the plastic bag swung in arcs from Grace Cloud's wrist. As if possessed, she opened the bag. The cold potatoes were coated in congealed oil, hard and greasy in her mouth. This street food she always looked down on, just like she once dismissed my clumsy efforts. But today she chewed mechanically, as if trying to taste why I was so obsessed with this cheap stuff. She stopped looking at her shadow under the streetlight, suddenly realizing the days without me were so empty. If the sound of the door opening woke Grace Cloud, she practically sprang up and rushed to the front door. When she saw it was her mom, her hopeful eyes dimmed instantly. At the dinner table, my stepdad rambled on, talking about how I was doing at first high. Each word stabbed at Grace Cloud's heart. Those mundane little stories should have been told excitedly by me to her. Let him come back. Grace Cloud suddenly interrupted my speech. He looked up surprised, his chopsticks pausing midair. Didn't you push him to go to first high? The chandelier above the table cast flickering shadows on Grace Cloud's face. She stared at my empty chair, softly saying I regret it. But those words came too late. The kid who used to trail behind her seemed to have found a new sister willing to scan her payment code for him. The air at the dinner table froze. My stepmom heavily set down her chopsticks, her face dark as a storm brewing. Do you think transferring schools is a child's game? It depends on whether Felix Round wants to. My stepdad quickly tried to smooth things over, pouring his wife a glass of warm water. He just transferred not long ago. The 2 schools have different curricula. Switching back and forth will affect his studies. He looked gently at Grace Cloud, Let's talk about this at the end of the term. It has to be now. Grace Cloud stood up abruptly, her chair screeching across the floor. Her mind was filled with images of me and Willow Serenity. Those intimate moments. Her chest felt like it held a burning coal. His grades are so good, he can totally catch up. A sharp slap cut through her outburst. My stepmom's hand trembled with anger. What do you take him for? A pet you can summon, at will. My stepdad quickly supported his wife, half-jokingly adding a punishment. No allowance for 3 months. Grace Cloud stood frozen, her left cheek burning, stubbornly repeating no later than next term. Before she could finish, her eyes suddenly stung with tears. My stepmom saw the glimmer in her daughter's eyes, swallowing the scolding words on her tongue. Back in her room, as if possessed, Grace Cloud picked up her phone. She stared at our chat. The last message still from 2 months ago. Her trembling fingers typed a line. I broke up with Victor Prosper. She sent it, but a red exclamation mark appeared. Calling only got a cold automated voice saying, "Shed been blocked." Unwilling to give up, she contacted my homeroom teacher. When the call finally connected, my cheerful voice was like a knife to her heart. Dad, you're back. Me and Willow Serenity today. Grace Cloud's hoarse voice cut me off. The other end went silent, followed by a beep beep. She gripped the scalding phone, suddenly remembering the red bean bracelet she didn't buy. Rummaging through every pocket but finding nothing. A tear unexpectedly fell onto the phone screen. In the dead of night, the care she once took for granted had become a luxury. The midterm exam atmosphere enveloped the class. Everyone seemed nailed to their seats, heads buried in study. When I collapsed onto my chair with a stack of math problems, I felt like a zombie that could solve equations. Luna Song suddenly leaned in mysteriously, her eyes gleaming scarily. Spill it. You've won over the school's beauty queen, haven't you? I nearly choked on my spit. What are you talking about? Still pretending. Luna Song excitedly patted my shoulder. The whole school knows Willow Serenity never buys late night snacks for anyone, except you. I instinctively touched my nose, thinking of last night's steaming bowl of beef noodles, guiltily turning my face away. Luna Song didn't let up, continuing to expose me. Plus, I heard her call you round. I nearly jumped out of my chair. That was worse than little bro. At least not as embarrassing. While racking my brain for an explanation, the classroom door echoed with a drawn-out call. Felix Round. Willow Serenity leaned against the doorframe, her uniform jacket draped over her shoulder. The physics teacher wants us to pick up some papers. I groaned, slumping back in my chair. This was the 3rd time today. Luna Song, like she'd been injected with adrenaline, secretly gave me a thumbs up. Her knowing look gave me goosebumps. Heaven knows what weird plot she was imagining. Willow Serenity and I are clearly just pure, innocent friends. In the physics teacher's office, Willow Serenity and I were like opposites. She sat by the teacher discussing advanced problems, while I huddled in a corner reviewing basics. My physics wasn't bad, but the two schools' curricula were misaligned, making electromagnetism nauseating, and optics a complete blind spot. While the teacher explained to Willow Serenity, I looked around bored, noticing a red string peeking from her uniform pocket, though her wrist already wore a red bean bracelet. This discovery made me glance a few more times. As we left the office, I couldn't help asking, "You bought another identical one?" Willow Serenity visibly paused, her fingers instinctively covering her pocket, her expression suddenly unnatural. That day I used a little trick to take back your bracelet from her. I pretended not to hear the guilt in her voice, bluntly holding out my wrist, then put it on me. Willow Serenity moved fast, as if afraid I'd change my mind, then hurriedly tried to slip away. Sis has things to do, I'm off. When she was far enough, I looked at the red bean on my wrist. The carved Serenity made my breath catch. So the one I was wearing was Willow Serenity's. Her usually lazy figure now moved as if flying. The sunset dyed her ears red. I instinctively gripped the red bean, a strange feeling rising in my chest. In the end, I didn't take off the bracelet, just quietly hid it under my uniform sleeve. If Luna Song knew about this, she'd probably jump for joy. Her wild guesses seemed to be coming true. Stepping out of the final exam room, I let out a relieved breath. 2 months of grinding optics weren't wasted after all. During the short break before senior year, Dad and my stepmom cooked themselves, saying they wanted to make up for me. I was curled up on the sofa, texting Willow Serenity. when Grace Cloud suddenly handed me a stack of papers. "The transfer paperwork is done. Just sign it." Her voice was firm, like she was talking about the weather. I didn't look up, no need, but she kept going at second high. "They just opened a new snack shop by the gate. Your friends miss you too." "Not necessary." I scrolled through my phone, recalling how First High's Food Street just opened a Ling Na potato branch last week. Grace Cloud's voice trembled. Felix Round were not done talking. The doorbell rang right then. Opening it, I saw Willow Serenity and nearly dropped my phone. She casually greeted my parents. "Uncle, Auntie, no one's cooking at my place. Can I eat here?" Dad enthusiastically invited her to sit, then pulled me into a room. "You little rascal, not bad. Landing such a pretty girl." I frantically waved my hands. "Not yet." Under Dad's teasing gaze, I blushed, correcting myself. "At least not yet." The living room atmosphere grew strange. Willow Serenity sat gracefully, but Grace Cloud had a bruise under her eye. "Classmate Grace, how careless." Willow Serenity feigned surprise. I nodded in agreement. "Maybe it's a balance issue." The sound of Grace Cloud slamming her door startled my parents in the kitchen. By the time dinner was over, that closed door still hadn't opened. Before leaving, Willow Serenity secretly scratched my palm. I nearly dropped my bowl. The smell of Ling Na potatoes wafted from the kitchen. I suddenly felt transferring was the best decision I ever made. Senior year flew by like a fast-forwarded movie, opening my eyes to practice tests, closing them to homework. Even time for strolling the food street was drastically cut. Willow Serenity and I often stayed in the study room, sipping coffee and nibbling bread. Thankfully, our efforts paid off. On the day college entrance exam results were announced, our scores were enough for top-tier school. Before the deadline to submit preferences, Grace Cloud burst into my room, her eyes red, asking which school I'd choose. Seeing me silent, she suddenly laughed maniacally. "I knew it. You're definitely following Willow Serenity, right?" She gripped my hand tightly. "She doesn't even see you as a brother." "Clever." I shook off her hand. "I don't see her as a sister either." Tears streamed down Grace Cloud's face. She trembled, saying clearly, "I liked you first." Her words made me laugh. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Amid the noise, Grace Cloud's voice was crystal clear. "That guy, I can't stand him." Followed by mocking laughter. When the recording ended, Grace Cloud seemed drained of all strength, collapsing to the floor, stammering apologies, saying she didn't know I was there, saying she regretted it, saying she actually. I cut her off, turning my back, seeing her curled up on the floor. The memories that once humiliated me now felt like faded old photos, no longer stirring my heart. The hallway lights stretched my shadow long. I knew Willow Serenity was waiting downstairs, and this time, we could finally walk side by side openly. Under the twinkling lights below, Willow Serenity's silhouette was strikingly clear. I rushed down in 2 strides. Our 2 red bean bracelets lightly clinked as our hands clasped. Grace Cloud's wails faded behind us. At that moment, the world seemed to hold only our intertwined fingers. In truth, the day the college exams ended, this relationship had a new beginning. I remember that day in the dim light of the movie theater. Willow Serenity nervously spilled popcorn all over the floor until the credits rolled. She was still fumbling with her words. I looked at her flushed ears, recalling our first meeting. Her haughty demeanor. Who'd have thought the proud senior sister couldn't even get a confession out smoothly? "Not ready yet," I teased, leaning close to her ear. Willow Serenity froze, her eyelashes trembling like startled butterfly wings. The contrast made me laugh, so I just kissed her. At first she seemed paused, until my clumsy lips brushed hers. She snapped awake, wrapping her arms around my waist. The kiss tasted sweet like popcorn, lingering for a long time. Until the cleaning lady started sweeping, we parted. Willow Serenity finally found her voice, whispering a belated confession in my ear. The moment I smiled back, I saw her eyes light up with a final spark, bright as a sky full of stars. 2 red strings swayed gently under the streetlights. I knew the days ahead would hold countless moments like this. In the dim morning classroom, on paths strewn with cherry blossoms, in every ordinary yet special day, repeating like over and over, turning it into the sweetest love story. The breeze whispered through, carrying the scent of flowers and moonlight. I held her hand and walked on, no longer quietly, but together toward the future. No matter how time passes, these red bean bracelets will stay with us, marking the journey of two hearts.